Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking once again about the jizya, the tax of non-Muslims in an Islamic state. The concept of the jizya is mentioned only once in the Quran in Surah 929 where it reads, "Fight those who believe not in Allah, nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and His Apostle, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if they are of the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued." Now, despite its dark history, you have many Muslims today claiming that this system was a fair trade-off and that it's still justifiable. Since the non-Muslims would be benefiting from the protection and infrastructure of the Islamic country, it's only fair that they pay an extra tax, since Muslims themselves are required to pay the zakat, which is their charity tax and is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. There are many videos online that repeat the same point. Although previously I talked about how, in practice, the jizya was abused throughout nearly all of its history, today we'll look at something a little different. For the sake of the argument, we'll take the jizya in theory how they would present it, and we'll analyze it, and we'll see that it's still not a fair or equal system at all. Let's start with an analogy. Say tomorrow the President of the United States comes out and says that all non-Christians are required to pay a tax. This tax is exclusively for them because they are not Christian. These non-Christians would be exempt from military service. They enjoy our infrastructure and they are under our protection, as well as being a minority. Therefore, they have to pay the tax. Women, children, and the elderly will be exempt, and it's not a terribly high tax. Christians pay a tithe, so it wouldn't be fair for us Christians to pay something while the non-Christians don't pay anything. Thus, Christians create their own parallel justification. Non-Christians don't tithe, so they must pay us instead. Understandably, there would be justified outrage. This would be viewed as religious discrimination and persecution. It would be labeled as bigoted, anti-democracy, and a return to theocratic dictatorship. Why? It follows the same concept as a jizya. Even most Christians would be out and condemn this, and they would be protesting it. What if Hindus want to do the same thing? Now it's bigoted? Because no matter what anyone says, the fact remains that it's not a fair system. Let's examine this a little further. Since Muslims pay the zakat, which is a 2.5% obligatory charity tax according to Islam, it's not fair for them to carry this burden and everyone else not to contribute. First off, that's the problem. They are Muslim by choice, and they have a religious obligation to fulfill. Just because they pay the zakat doesn't mean everyone has to follow suit in similar fashion. This would not be equality. This would be false equivalence. The assumption is that just because you are doing something, everyone else has to be doing something similar, or the same. One is voluntary faith, and the other is coercion for those who do not practice the religion. Since I'm doing it, you have to do it as well. Or at least, you have to carry the load. There's the tu quoque fallacy as well. Muslims will often point out that other taxes were abused throughout history, and that the jizya wasn't even all that bad compared to other societies. Medieval France and the Byzantine Empire had very harsh taxes on their subjects. You can't complain about the jizya. Other systems of tax were oppressive too, but that doesn't matter. No one cares about medieval France, and no one is advocating that it was a fair system. No one is trying to bring back the Byzantine style of taxation. That has no bearing on the argument. Just because other countries had harsh tax systems doesn't make jizya acceptable. Even if they were sometimes worse, it doesn't justify anything. By that logic, slaves with masters that beat them less would still technically fall in the category of fair, because there were other masters who beat their slaves a lot more. It's still oppression. We don't use 7th century taxes as a moral benchmark for our modern law. Tying into this, something that was a tax system long ago doesn't mean it should be applied today. It would be similar to saying that just because slavery was used mostly throughout all of human history, it should still be applied today, because it had economic and political bonuses many times. Some Muslims might say the Prophet implemented it, early caliphates applied it, so it's eternally just and fair. This doesn't follow logically. To justify it today, you would need independent arguments showing why it ought to apply beyond its historical precedent. Otherwise, you're just appealing to authority and tradition. There's also the appeal to fairness, where there's a concept of trying to make things equal and fair because Muslims pay the zakat. You know how to make things fair? Tax everyone equally, regardless of their religion. Not one religious group paying a faith-based tax and the other group penalized because they don't. This is a misuse of fairness. Even morally, it doesn't quite work. Just because you want to say that something ought to be a certain way according to your own beliefs doesn't mean you can dismiss facts about reality. Jizya is not equal and is enforced involuntarily on non-Muslims, so it's not fair. Continuing on, another issue is that just because the majority of the population is doing something like paying the zakat The rest of the population isn't obligated to do so as well. It's not their religion. If fairness means equal burden, the answer isn't a special tax for non-Muslims. It's one tax for everyone. The same tax system should be applied to all. Equating zakat to jizya is like equating a voluntary tithe with a religious fine. They're not the same thing. Justice isn't about matching burdens by faith. It's about treating all citizens equally under the law. Zakat is devotion. Jizya is discrimination. Don't confuse the two. If you need non-believers to bankroll your religion, it's not a tax. It's extortion. Zakat is your worship. Jizya is your way of punishing people for not worshipping like you. Stop pretending that it's fair. Calling jizya fair because of zakat is like saying that slavery is fair because masters have to buy themselves food too. If you need to tax people for not believing, then we are not considered your equals. And no wonder, Islam doesn't describe non-Muslims as equals. In Sahih Muslim 26-53889, Sahih Muslim 26-5389, it reads, "Do not greet the Jews and Christians before they greet you, and when you meet any one of them on the roads, force him to go to the narrowest part of it." Tafsir Ibn Kathir states, "Therefore, Muslims are not allowed to honor the people of the Dhimma or elevate them above Muslims, for they are miserable, disgraced, and humiliated." Wow, such tolerant language. Saying non-Muslims paid for protection sounds a lot like a protection racket, just like the mafia. Conscription, when it exists, applies to all citizens today, not just a religious majority. If military exemption is a logic, then Muslims should pay a special tax if they're not serving too. Otherwise, it's unfairly one-sided. It creates a two-tier system. Muslims are on the top, while the rest are second-class citizens. In our Western civilization, we don't want zakat. We don't need zakat. We don't need the jizya, and we don't need or want this system. If you want to pay the zakat, that's fine. That is your religious obligation. It's your faith, not ours. This is America. We are proud of what our forefathers built. The jizya is set up perfectly for abuse, even if hypothetically it's supposed to be fair. The honest truth, the whole thing is basically just saying, you need to pay me to keep you safe. From me. Thanks for watching. I encourage you, if you want to learn more about Islam, go ahead and check out David Wood or the Apostate Prophets channel, and they have many videos talking about the different issues that they'll find within the Quran or the Hadiths.